I'm just so excited to be here. Thank you guys all for being here. And thank you so much for Code for America for having us here and putting together this awesome panel. I've been on my fair share of government panels, and never I've been on a panel that was about data-driven government. That was all women. So what an awesome, awesome moment in time for us. So we're breaking the seal, as they say, ladies. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about data-driven government, and I want to talk a little bit about the work I did. My name is Beth Blauer. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the director of a product at called GovStat, and I work for a company called Socrata. But I'm going to talk mostly today about the experience that I had working in the state of Maryland for one of the what I would consider most effective governors in our country, Martin O'Malley, and overseeing about 85% of our workforce and a comparable amount of our budget through a data-driven program called GovStat, StateStat. So I'm clicking to the clicking people. There we go. Okay. So the idea of performance stat is a relatively old idea, right? The idea of using data to drive performance in government is something that New York City has been doing for now almost 2 decades. And StateStat, the program that I ran in Maryland, was adopted directly from CompStat, which started in New York City, which the police implemented to align data to the resources to make sure that they were actually focusing on their problems and focusing on solution to those problems. We scaled that in the city of Baltimore, the greatest city in America. Heather, you'll attest to that. No offense to other cities that are here. And we scaled that in CityStat. And then when I was working in the state of Maryland, CityStat was then turned into StateStat, and we applied that in Maryland. And now I have the opportunity to work with a number of other governments who are continuing to evolve this whole idea that not only are you freeing data and getting data out of the silos of government, but you're actually taking that data and you're applying it to problems, and you're trying to solve problems in government on the common platform of data, whether that's data in a spreadsheet, whether that's data in a map, whether that's data wherever you can find it. You're trying to free that data, and then you're trying to create a dialogue. So this is what we used to call the StateStat room. Some affectionately called it the war room in the state of Maryland. And one of the things I'd like for you to observe about this room is that it's a bunch of people sitting around a table, but in the backdrop, there are graphs and charts of maps of data. And we're using those graphs and charts of maps of data to walk through and solve our problems. And I wanted to take you through an example of how we did that with one of the things that we focused a lot on in Maryland, which was ending childhood hunger. There is no metric, there is no outcome measure that would uniformly identify how you could end childhood hunger in the state of Maryland. But what we did is we engaged stakeholders across our state, and we asked them to help us figure out what the definition of hunger was. And they told us that if we could get kids who were eligible for free lunch to get free breakfast, and also to get enrolled in our state nutrition program, and also to get them eating an evening meal and a summer meal, that we would make enormous progress in ending childhood hunger and food insecurity in our communities. But what we found out was it was really difficult to get kids to eat breakfast and to get kids to get access to food, because the data was telling us that all the kids were having lunch, but what they weren't getting was breakfast, and what they weren't getting were summer meals. And the reason why was because you would go through the line at lunch, and you would go with all the other students in your class, and you would get lunch. But then at breakfast, you were singled out, you were put into a line, no one else except for those that were entitled to breakfast got breakfast, and you were called out for it. And the kids that we interviewed when we went into the classrooms to figure out why they weren't eating breakfast said that they didn't want to be stigmatized as getting the free lunch or the subsidized meals. And so we took the data, we figured out where the kids were, we talked to the actual kids, and then we actually put together programs that would get breakfast in the classroom, get breakfast served to them on the buses as they were coming into school. So they were no longer having to get drawn out. And we let the data drive us to find the right populations of kids so that we could impact our penetration rates and we could get to the right people. But what ended up happening was we saw all these other results and outcomes because kids were now eating breakfast. And we also knew who the kids were. And so in the summertime, instead of, sorry, I wanted to go back one slide. So in the summertime, kids didn't necessarily have to go to summer school, which meant that they weren't necessarily getting food in the summertime. So we took a page out of the Baltimore hipster guidelines, and we said, people love to eat food from trucks. So we decided to create these food trucks, and we said, hey, let's go to our communities where we know we have 80 to 100% of kids who are eligible for free and reduced lunch, and let's bring the food to them. And let's spend some time with them in their communities and get some food to them. And it worked. And we saw major success in the program. We saw more kids than ever getting food at all hours of the day. We felt better about the work that we were doing, and we were able to say that we were moving the needle on something important to us. But we didn't stop at childhood hunger. We were able to then make correlations in our data between the feeding programs that we had at school to academic performance. We saw kids more engaged in school than ever. We became the #1 school system in the country, and we've maintained it for 5 years. We have more kids participating in STEM classes. We have been consistently one of the highest-ranked education states, and a lot of that credit goes to how we feed our kids and make sure we're nourishing their bodies and their minds. And we didn't stop at school, and we didn't stop at feeding. We started to see people coming back to the city of Baltimore, moving out of the suburbs and back into the city to create a better place for families to grow up. And we started to see outcomes both in our economic recovery, in the things that we were doing to clean up our Chesapeake Bay and make it a livable, swimmable bay. And we started to see outcomes spread, and it was all done on the common platform, using data to drive our decisions and to make sure that we were moving the needle in the right direction. And so today, I'm so excited to have this panel and to have this conversation, because this is sort of the next step after transparency. This is what we're going to be doing with data in our governments, and it's going to start at the city level.